Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about professional dungeon masters. What do we do with them? Where do we put professional dungeon masters? Do they matter? Are they if you are doing dungeon mastering professionally, are you still a dungeon master? There's a lot of questions here. Let's kind of dig into this. So what I want to talk about today is so there's this issue of dungeon mastering. What do we do with dungeon mastering? Where do we land with dungeon mastering, and what is the hierarchy of dungeon masters, right? So first and foremost, dungeon master is far above and beyond game master. They're not the same thing. Dungeon master means that what you're doing is linked to Gary Gygax's legacy. That's a lot of people don't understand this. So I've bought and sold Bitcoin, right? And the thing that Bitcoin is incredibly confusing. It's not intuitive. It's non-intuitive, which means it is confusing to the vast majority of people. The most valuable thing in Bitcoin is not Bitcoin itself. It's blockchain. Blockchain is a real technology. We are just now figuring out everything we want to do with blockchain. It's incredibly valuable. It is a incredibly robust innovation in technology, right? And people don't get this, like Ethereum and Ripple and Dogecoin. All that stuff is I consider them all junk coin, and the reason why is they didn't come from what makes Bitcoin tick, which is blockchain, which is a real innovation in technology. All the rest of this are just copies of Bitcoin and trying to build something with no foundation, right? Bitcoin is built on a rock solid platform of actual technology, which is blockchain, which is being leveraged in 100 different ways today beyond Bitcoin, because it's real and substantive and you could put weight on it, right? All these other copy coins they're not valuable because they're not built on anything of real value. Blockchain has real value. It is real tech that took a incredibly dedicated genius who overcame a huge amount of obstacles to create it, right? It's the same thing. Dungeons & Dragons is fundamentally different than every other tabletop role-playing game on the planet because it carries Gary's legacy. And without Gary's legacy, it's a junk game, right? It just doesn't have weight. You can't put weight on it. It's going to crack if you do anything beyond having fun with it, right? Whereas D&D, you could take Dungeons & Dragons farther than fun. And Dungeons & Dragons can take you farther than where you are now. That's the difference, right? And so basically, Dungeon Master ranks over every game. The worst Dungeon Master is better than the best Game Master in the world, has more value, is higher ranked, right? The hierarchy is there, okay? The premier the premier Dungeon Master today is a Dungeon Master who has dedicated herself to Dungeons & Dragons for a physical table game, using people locally who she is dungeon mastering for and seeking to improve the people at her table through Dungeons & Dragons, and by extension, they going out into the world and sharing the wisdom, the passion, the joy, the love that they received within the game, right? And making the world better beyond the table. That is the top tier dungeon master in the world right now, okay? Below that, right, is a dungeon master who seeks to create a fun game for their table. I have incredible sympathy for these dungeon masters. They simply don't understand that Gary called them to more with Dungeons & Dragons, and they still believe that Dungeons & Dragons is simply a game. They don't believe what I believe, which is Unbound identity theory, which Dungeons & Dragons is a human improvement engine and is the next level of intellectual evolution, right? So that's your second. So first is Dungeon Master, then is Dungeon Master for fun, right? The fun Dungeon Master. And then below that is every professional dungeon master, right? I think once you put money on it, it doesn't remove dungeon master from you. Okay, I do think you could still be a dungeon master and dungeon master for money, but it puts you at the bottom of the list of dungeon masters, right? Because it cheapens it. I truly believe it's lazy on every end of the transaction, right? So first of all, these people who are hiring this dungeon master, why not just get somebody from their local area to dungeon master for them, right? Because Gary wanted us to build relationships with Dungeons & Dragons. And so rather than doing the hard thing of seeking a dungeon master within their area And get this, taking not the best dungeon master they can get, but taking the person who's there in proximity to them and getting the best game they can and having a real relationship with that person. Professional dungeon masters are making dungeon mastering transactional, not relational. That's a problem. That is a huge problem. It is an abandonment at some level, not at the complete level, of Gary's vision for the game. Gary never talked about professional dungeon mastering, right? It was never within his vision for what a dungeon master was. And I think attaching money to dungeon mastering cheapens it, right? It does not remove the dungeon master title from what they're doing. I think you can be a real dungeon master and still be professional. So I think where we land is we can embrace professional dungeon masters as the lowest, most least valuable dungeon masters who are out there, right? And realize that they are trading relationship for transaction. And that is, it's a little dirty. I think it muddies the water, right? It's just, we should not remove the title of dungeon master from them, but no one should honor them above even a fun dungeon master, and certainly not above a real dungeon master. And below professional dungeon master then is the very best groups of game masters, right? They're even below a professional dungeon master, because they're on junk coin, right? They're on games that don't matter. They don't carry Gary's legacy. They don't have any real value. They don't have a rock solid foundation. They're built on sand, and they will never go anywhere. Do not waste your time being a game master. Stay on being a dungeon master, and understand we can tolerate professional dungeon masters, but no one should emulate them or honor them, right? They are making what should be relational transactional, and it muddies the water. It's not great. It's not a good trend, right? And that's my take. I'd love to hear your take. Where do you rank these dungeon masters, right? Would you do real dungeon master, fun dungeon master, game master, then professional, or would you put them in a different order? I'd love to hear your order. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.